Welcome to the Crazy Trey Podcast Show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is your main man, a.k.a. Crazy Crack, a.k.a. on this podcast. I'd like to thank everyone out there that's been listening to my podcast. I know a lot of people are reaching out and trying to contact me. I know that a lot of new people from Los Angeles to even from Ghana, Singapore is listening to my podcast. Again, I wanted to approach this podcast for people like myself who are somewhat have a learning disability or physical disability, give them a source of feedback to be heard, be talked to, want to be talked to, be anywhere possible to be around the average folks. And I think it's important that people with disability are able to express their thoughts and ideas without being talked down to or being rejected or ignored. Everything has to be considered, anything value of someone's cognitive thinking or knowledge or comprehension. So I'm creating this podcast for myself. I am doing more of a sports podcast. I do stuff with Ron sometimes, talk about his disability. Sometimes I talk about, restaurants and eating and having craft beer and so on, and whatever we like to talk about. So today, folks, I wanted to focus on sports. And I know that my buddy Griff is going to be on the show this week, and it's probably going to be aired on Thursday. Now, I may have it on Wednesday, depending if he is able to make it or not. But let's just start with congratulating the Detroit Tigers from getting to the ALDS and losing in the fifth game, the final game against Cleveland Guardians. And this is a team that was not expected on August 13 or before that to make it to the playoffs. They had a 0.2%. This is a team that relied on one starter, and that one starter was Tarek Skubal. As most of you guys know, Casey Myles was coming back from Tommy John surgery. It took him a while to get moving and getting ready to go, but it just didn't work out in the playoffs for him to start or being in the lineup at all. Reese Olsen was another player, another starter, that it seemed, though, that it didn't seem to work out for him in the playoffs or then towards the end of the year. So Detroit had to pick Tarek Skubal, which is a Cy Young. He's going to be a Cy Young winner. Most strikeouts, best ERA. I'm missing something as well. Strikeouts, ERA, innings pitch as well. But I want to just really name these pitchers here. We got Tarek Skubal, Reese Olsen, came off the bench a couple times. Brant Herter, Keita Monteiro, and Casey Myles. These are the starters. And the bullpen was Will Vest, Brew Brisky, Brennan Hanfee, Sean Gunther, and Jackson Jobe. So these are the guys that they had to go by. So it was Tarek Skubal, and then Will Vest, Brew Brisky, Brennan Hanfee, and Sean Gunther and Jackson Jobe. You couldn't ask any better way to get to the playoffs to beat Houston Astros. And unfortunately, the last game that Detroit had to play was at Cleveland, and Tarek Skubal gave up a grand slam. Now, a lot of us would wonder why would he keep Tarek Skubal in the lineup with the bases loaded. Why wouldn't you go get Will Vest or Brew Brisky or any of the other guys in the bullpen? And I think the reason why he did that is because he knew that the bullpen was being strained and the bullpen for Troy. I'm just surprised how far they got to or into the playoffs. Usually, when the bullpen is used that much, usually the bullpen breaks down a lot faster than anything that you can ever imagine. The fact that we got the game to the game 5 is something that it's remarkable. I do think AJ Hinch deserves to be the manager of the year for bringing that team to be where it's at. Remember, we gave up Jack Flaherty. We got Sweeney as a shortstop. Jackson Joel came up at the very end of the season. He got himself into a jam. I think it was game 3 or game 4. But you know, you can't be disappointed. This is going to be a awesome off season. This is something that we're going to look into or look forward to next year. Maybe we'll get a starter from free agency coming in as a pitcher to help Tarek Skubal. I do not expect Tarek Skubal to have another great, awesome Cy Young year. I would almost think that he would take a step back, maybe give up more runs, maybe less strikeouts. I would assume that they would want him to pitch less innings in the beginning of the year. But, you know, I'm hoping that Detroit gets a starter to come in, a couple guys come in to help him out. And I think they're going to put Jackson Jobe as a starter. And I almost feel like Brew Brisky should be a starter. And I don't know what it is, but he used to be a starter. And it seems to work out where it doesn't matter if he comes in with no one on base or people on base or players on base. But he seemed to be really on cue. And I don't know why they gave up so fast on him as a starter. I would look forward to having him semi-start certain games against certain teams that may not be as good as they are, or like Chicago White Sox. I will say the Chicago White Sox probably won't have another bad year. Usually when you have a really, really bad year, you get new free agents in there, you get new management in there, and then everything just turns around in a heartbeat. I don't know anything about their minor league system, but I don't think that the Chicago White Sox are going to be that horrible. I just don't see that happening. But going back to the Tigers, I think every Detroit Tiger fan, we're so ecstatic, so amazed by this. I got my Detroit Tiger hat over here. I got my Detroit Lion hat on as we speak. But that's what I want to leave it at that. I just want to leave it to know that I didn't forget about the Tigers. I didn't want to rant about the game and the situation about giving up the grand slam. I mean, you can't be asking too much out of your starter or your own starter to never give up runs. I mean, he didn't give up runs for 3 weeks in a row. So to give up a grand slam and you end up losing that game, you can't be mad about that. So here we go. Now we just really got to talk about the Detroit Lions. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I want to say this first. The Dallas Cowboys surprised me how bad they are. And I want to say that the 3-2 record was really deceiving to me. But I know that Dallas Cowboys always play Detroit Lions very well. And Detroit Lions lost 6 games in a row to Dallas Cowboys. So, and what's amazing about this is that I thought that Detroit would have to play against the referees, along with Dallas Cowboys. They still had CeeDee Lamb. They still had Dak Prescott. By the way, I have Dak Prescott as my fantasy football guy, and now I'm going to have to drop him and play Jared Goff. I have Jared Goff on my team, but I really did not think that Jared Goff would have a great game and Dak Prescott would have a horrible game. Just completely horrible. I've never realized how bad Dak Prescott is in this season. I picked him up as a fantasy football guy on my team, and ladies and gentlemen, it's just amazing that Detroit went in there, got their stuff done, they stuck to the running game right away. They went to Montgomery. Montgomery breaks tackles left and right. Dallas can't tackle anyone to save their lives. And then they do a bunch of these trick plays, a flea flicker, and throw the ball about 40 yards to Laporta. And you know what? I must say this. I'm a little surprised that they did that in the early part of the game. And what they really did, and what they did very well about Detroit, is that they took the fan base, the audience, the crowd out of the game. And they did not allow the referees to dictate the game at the end of the game, because the game was never close. So remember that. Detroit got their stuff done. They went on the bye week. They did their homework. They knew where everyone was going to be. And by the way, Ezekiel Elliott, he's done. Let's just be real. He's done. He's not any good. He's never going to be good again. He was never that good. And I don't really care what anybody says about his stats when he was with Dallas before that. He was never that good in the NFL. So I'm amazed. I mean, let's look at the stats here. I mean, this is from 2 weeks ago when Jared Goff went for 18 for 18. I think what's amazing about it is that no one's ever done that, I don't think. But here we go, folks. We got 18 for 26, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dak Prescott, 17 for 33, only 178 yards, 2 interceptions. And you know what? Those 2 interceptions were in the beginning of the game. I know the first one was the beginning of the game. And they moved the ball downfield. And I don't know what Dak Prescott was looking at, because Branch was just right underneath where Dak Prescott was going to try to throw the ball over the top to his receiver. And by the way, his receiver was covered. So I don't know why you would throw the football in that direction when the guy is being kind of a double coverage. And he wasn't being double covered, but it looked like he was being double coverage. So if we go down, we had David Montgomery, 12 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, it's going to hurt me because I got Gibbs. And Gibbs didn't hit anything for a touchdown. I'm in a situation where I might have to find another running back, because I don't know if Gibbs is going to be my guy to score touchdowns for my fantasy football league. And I know a lot of you guys out there that do fantasy football league, and you guys care about your teams more than I do, but that's something to really think about. We got Craig Reynolds with 6 carries, 21 yards. We have Jameson Williamson. They did a little behind the scrimmage line with him. 1 carry for 11 yards. I mean, if you look at the receiving for Detroit, you got Jameson Williamson, 3 receptions, 76 yards, 1 touchdown. And, Jared Goff found this kid twice. Well, 3 times, but he found him twice going deep. And he did drop one football for Jameson Winston. He did drop one football. But, I mean, you can't. I mean, this is Detroit's on full cylinder. There's nothing that Detroit can stop them besides injuries. Now we'll get to the injury part a little bit about Hutchinson. But Sam Laporta had one reception, 52 yards, one touchdown. That was the flea flicker, which I thought was way too early for that part of the game, but they did it. So I can't be upset about that because Detroit won. Detroit changed things up, and they seem to know what they're doing. I think Ben Johnson is a very smart guy, and he just seems to understand how to make the defenses, make them lives a living hell. And then we have Jamal Gibbs. They had 3 receptions, 28 yards. His longest one was 20 yards, 5 targets. Allen Robinson, let me see, nothing for him. But, and we got to look, I skipped one guy. I got Tim Patrick, 3 receptions, 68 yards. His longest one was 42 yards. I mean, this is a guy that I didn't know who he was and what he does. I mean, I guess people tell me that he had an ACL injury years ago, and he's not as quick as he used to be. But look, if I look this guy up here, if I can push my buttons right. Look, we got this guy. He's got for the season. He's got 8 receptions, 140 yards. I mean, like yesterday. I mean, like against Seattle, he had 2 receptions, total of 52 yards, and I mean, I can't express the happiness I am that now we got Sam Laporta back doing his thing. He's healthy, he's full healthy. We got Patrick who's doing his thing. It was a surprise. Look, St. Brown is. I mean, what can you say about St. Brown? I mean, St. Brown is your consistency. He's your reliable guy that, you know, when Jared Goff is getting into trouble or needs a first down, he's that guy he throws it to. And then you got Jameson Winston, a deep threat. Now you just stretch the field so much, so well, and you're running the football with 2 running backs. As a defense coordinator, you're playing Russian roulette. You're playing this boring game of war. And you can't predict what the card is going to be because it's a card game of war. It's for a bunch of 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds to play. But that's what Detroit's doing. They're just flipping a card, and whatever they get, they're doing it. And if the defense doesn't pick the right card, too bad, so sad. And I don't know why I picked that card game, for example. But, I mean, there's nothing that Dan Campbell can't do. There's nothing that Ben Johnson can do. And let's give Dan Campbell props for remembering Jared Goff. And he also gave the game ball to Branch. So and then also, this is kind of cute. This is kind of nice. Jared Goff then gave the game ball back to Dan Campbell for beating the team that he used to play for, the Dallas Cowboys, and coming back home. Because you got to remember, Dan Campbell is a Texan. So he was born and raised and went to Texas A&M. And he played for Dallas Cowboys. So that's pretty cool that he finally beat his home team. And there's nothing else that you could ever want more from him. But, next up is figuring out what we need to do with Hutchinson's injury. And look, folks, he broke his leg. I think he broke his tibia. They say it was a clean cut, clean break. So they say that the injury is a lot better than a fracture. And he'll be back in 10 months. I'm thinking 12 months. I'm thinking that it'll be 12 months so that they can actually make sure that it's healthy. And I do not want him to come back so fast that he breaks his leg again or stress fracture his other leg. And that's usually that's what's concerning about me having him come back. And I know that they don't have a time sheet for his comeback, but I don't want them to rush it. I don't want them to rush him to come back for this year's playoffs, because if he does something worse to his leg, then you don't have him at all next year. And that'd be much more devastating than you just let him heal. And when he comes back next October, then you know that you gave him a full year to get ready. So here's a question that most people need to ask themselves. Should Detroit go out to the trading block? And should they try to reach out to teams for defensive ends? Now, I made a list earlier today of all the guys that I probably can't get. We can't get Micah Parsons from Dallas because Dallas will never let him go. And they still they still think they can make the playoffs and win Super Bowls with that horrible team, no defense. Maxx, who plays with the Chargers, I can't see Jim Harbaugh giving up anybody like him to Detroit for draft picks. I think maybe Jim would do that, but I just can't really see why he would do that. I mean, Maxx is one of a kind of a player that you just always keep as long as you can until his contract is over. But I don't know. That to me doesn't seem to have I don't think that would work. Of course, J.J. Watt or T.J. Watt, he's not going to go away from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh always keeps their defensive guys. They'll never let them go. So there's no reason to talk about that. Nick Bosa from San Fran, he's not going to go nowhere. I mean, Detroit might be better than the 49ers based on injuries that the 49ers have, but they're not going to give up the defensive guys. They're going to wait for McAfee to come back and help Prudy out and get things going over there. The only guy that I would consider from this list is Trey Hendrickson, a Cincinnati Bengals guy. If Cincinnati keeps losing games, I think I could see them giving up on players for draft picks. And the reason why I say this is because they'd rather have a team get younger and younger and get draft picks to help protect Joe Burrow and make the defense line better. And if they don't see themselves in the playoffs or a potential chance of winning the Super Bowl this year, you can always get 2 or 3 draft picks out of Detroit. But here's one guy that I was thinking about is John Franklin Myers. His 2024 season, he had 2.5 sacks this year so far, and he's got 7 solo tackles as of right now. 2023, last year, he played 17 games, 33 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 18 assists. Now that's not great numbers, but is it worth it for Detroit to get something like that? I don't like him either. I don't want him to get that. I think they need to go someone better. Jeffrey Simmons, as of right now, has 9 solo tackles. He's got, I didn't write down how many sacks he's got, but 2023, he has 44 total. He has 33 total tackles, 3.5 sacks. No, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong guy. 44 tackles, 30 solo tackles, 14 assists, and 5.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. So that's something that potentially Detroit should try to get. Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati, 2023, he played 17 games, 43 total tackles, 28 solo, 17.5 17.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. That's Hendrickson. So, is that possible? That's probably the most possible trade that Detroit could do. And that's only if Cincinnati is willing to give up on their season. But I don't see them giving up on season. So, who else is out there? Well, here's one guy that I think we need to talk about. Matt Crosby. Now, Matt Crosby plays for the Raiders. He's got a huge contract that he just signed. $94 million, 4 years, $23 million per season. He has a signing bonus of, let's say, $13 million. But here's the thing. He's from Eastern Michigan. He wants to come to Detroit. And the Raiders are sinking ship. So, what I saw on Twitter was, let me go find this. Let me go bookmarks. So let me go find this. So, someone on the internet made this proposal. Detroit would get Matt Crosby and a 2025 6th-round draft pick. And then the Raiders would get 2025 first round, 2026 first round, and 2026 fourth round. And then give up James Houston. Now, I think they can give up draft picks. Now, Detroit does have a $31 million cap room. But in all honesty, for 4 years, will Detroit be willing to pay up that contract for him in Detroit? But you have only a 2 or 3 year span that Detroit has a chance to win the Super Bowl. So the question is anyone else on the team for Detroit willing to reconstruct a contract to keep Crosby or to put Crosby on the payroll? And then, unfortunately, we have some bad news about Crosby. It seems as though is that the Vegas Raiders are struggling. Matt Crosby loses his mind and pushes one of the coaches on the sideline and he gets fined $1.2 million. And there's also an investigation going on with that. So does Detroit want something like that, that energy that you thought was all positive energy, but it's not? Now, I gotta take this hat off. This hat is driving me nuts. Some of these hats I buy are way too small for my big old head. So, but here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Will Detroit trade for somebody like Crosby? $94 million seems way too much for Crosby. And now that he's speculating on negative energy and negative reaction to his own coach that he loves, Antonio Pierce, if that's the coach that he pushed. Because he wanted to stay in Vegas because of Antonio Pierce. And Antonio Pierce turned that team around when he was the interim head coach last year. Now, they didn't go anywhere, but he did something for that team, and the team started to win. But you got to remember, Davante Adams wants to leave the Vegas Raiders. So the only way that Maxx Crosby could come to Detroit if Raiders give up on Davante Adams. Davante Adams leaves and goes to the Jets. Now there's also been a report that the Raiders are not going to give up Davante Adams because he's such a marquee player and a real bad quarterback. Look, Majitsu, he's just not the guy. He's never going to be a starter. I think that the Raiders were hoping and wishing and praying that Majitsu was going to be the guy, but he's just not. And with Carr being fired from his job and going to the Saints, it seems like Carr is the perfect match for anybody that goes anywhere, wherever Carr goes. It can't be Carr's fault. So the problem with Raiders is Raiders management along with Dallas Cowboys management. These two classic teams are now in the stages of reminiscing of the good old days for the NFL. But the Raiders are not going to give up Crosby if they're not going to give up on Davante Adams. And maybe they will give up on Crosby because they don't want his negative energy in Raiders world. Now, 30, 40 years ago, if he did that to a coach, they wouldn't care. It's that Raiders negative, positive energy that they've always kind of been jerks to their coaches and other people on the team. And they have that history of that type of style, that they don't have to be the coach's best friend and all that. But it's just not that team no more. So I think now that I've figured out that Crosby's pushing coaches and has a kind of a not a really great attitude, I then would question to try to get him. I think I will leave that alone. Now, there's one guy from Cleveland that I may consider even more, Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's got 2 more years on his contract. He's got maybe 3, counting this year. So 2005, 2014, 2015, 2024, 2025, and 2026 is at the end of this contract. Now, about Myles Garrett, continuously is a pretty good defensive end guy. He may not give you 17, 18 sacks because no one does that anymore. He may only give you 8, 9 sacks, but he's a huge presence that he proves year after year that he's pretty good. He is pretty good. So, and people have been talking about the Browns may want to sell because Deshaun Watson sucks, and I don't know why the head coach of the Cleveland Browns is so gung ho on making Deshaun Watson their starter week after he proves that he is not a good quarterback. He's got way too much on his plate. He's got too much problems at home. He's got too much court stuff going on. It's just not a good fit for Cleveland. But Cleveland fans and everyone wants that team to start selling because you know what? Chubbs is coming back. But Nick Chubb, I don't know if he's going to be any decent for that team. By the time he gets back there, is Watson and the head coach of Cleveland still going to be intact? I just can't see that happening. So Myles Garrett he can be considered someone that Detroit should try to pick up. Okay? I mean, he signed in 2020. Myles Garrett signed with Cleveland in 2020 again for 5 years, $125 million extension. He gets about $21 million of the signing bonus, and $100 million is guaranteed. And the average salary for him is $25 million. I'm just repeating myself. I don't know why I do that. So, but he's only got 2 more years on that contract, and then it's more manageable to pay him or reconstruct his contract like that for 2 or 3 years, and then let him go because most likely things have changed. It's going to be literally impossible to keep everyone on that team in Detroit at a very same base pay. Now, I think that Detroit should try to be like the New England Patriots of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and pay their offense and defense line guys a lot of money and then reconstruct wide receivers and tight ends contract so that everyone wins. But that's something down the road. But Myles Garrett is probably Detroit's best bet. Because Matt Crosby may be a homecoming sweet story, but now that he's pushing coaches, not getting his way, being kind of not smart about anything, that because if the team starts losing, your real character shows. So when your team wins, everything feels good. When your team loses, everything's bad. And not to say that the Raiders always had a good team, but having a bad team for years in a row can work you last nerve. And then last but not least, as I promised, I have to talk about Caitlin Clark. I have to talk about her because everyone makes a big deal. I used to have a friend named Sean, or an acquaintance of mine named Sean, who ranted and roamed about how Caitlin Clark is great for women's basketball, and he was so attracted to her, and he said, "Oh, she's so wonderful and so cute and all this." But here's the true story, folks. Caitlin Clark is a great women's basketball player. She broke a lot of NCAA records. She has a hell of a shot, 3-point shot. And come to find out, people at her peers don't like her. The WNBA players don't like her. I don't even know if it's white and black or both, or just black folks in the league that don't like her. But in all honesty, people started watching her because she was that good. She could shoot. She wasn't like 5 for 20 and had 22 points off free throws. She was like shooting almost 48, 47% on the field, on the court, and passing the basketball and making her team better. And her average attendance for the Fever was $15,000. 15,000 seats, and in the regular season it was only 3,000 seats. So before she came, and now she's going to the European League because she has enough of this WNBA. She has enough of these other athletes that don't like her. She doesn't like any of those guys or those girls. Look, if you don't like Caitlin Clark because she's a good basketball player, you might be racist. And if you think that because she's white, that she's being popularized, no, then you're being racist. Because none of the other girls has numbers like that. And none of the other women in that league, other women who don't play basketball, don't watch you guys or you girls. So, and I get it, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, it would suck if you're a WNBA player and you're a black athlete and you score maybe 17, 18 points a game, but it's not flashy, it's not great. It's just like you get your rebounds, you score a bucket, you do a fast breaks, you still score, you hit your mid shots, but it's not fancy like Caitlin Clark's 3-point shots and her ability to pass the ball. And now you get a bunch of these little white people watching her because she's so phenomenal. But she scores points by the 3-point line, not easy buckets around the rim. And she does that, but it's not boring. Her 3-point shots are amazing, right? But she's leaving the WNBA. And I think the WNBA, like I said before, if you want the solution to the WNBA, you're going to have to play at the same time as the guys. So if it's a fall sport, they should play in the fall. And they should play a couple hours before the guys get to start to play. So if the game's at 7, the WNBA should be playing at 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I'm telling you folks, this is a good way that schools and churches can go see women play sports. Women play basketball on a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon. And they'll bring their fan base and they'll be able to watch the WNBA. And if they choose to stay to watch the NBA games, they're more than happy. But they do need to change the time slots and the season for the WNBA because no one's watching the WNBA finals. No one cares. Okay? I don't know if Caitlin Clark, if her team got into the WNBA finals, I think some people would tune in, but I'd rather watch the MLB playoffs or the Red Wings. Or I'm watching Monday Night Football right now. So let's remember that. If you want the WNBA to improve, you're going to have to start playing the same time as guys and ending the same time as guys. And then you have to kind of combine the All-Star game with male and female teams, tournaments, or something. But there you have it, folks. I'm going to end this podcast. I want to thank you for showing up. I'd like to thank you for doing me a favor, listening to me. Appreciate it. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere that you download your podcast. I'd like to thank RSS.com for being my distributor. And I'd like to thank Ron and Griff and other people that have been on my podcast, even Sean in the past. So, peace, love, and God bless.